Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Denice Show. I am honored to have Rabbi Yuri Pilichowski on the program today. This is a well-known author and scholar in Israel. He lives in the Jericho area, and we're just pleased to have him talk about President Trump's peace plan. It's a very important plan. It hasn't gotten a lot of play here in the United States due to the COVID-19 crisis, as well as these violent protests and burnings on the streets of America. But Rabbi Yuri Pilichowski, I wanted to have you on the program today because based on my reading of the Trump peace plan, this can benefit and does benefit the state of Israel and by extension the United States. Could you please tell our audience if you think the Trump peace plan benefits Israel, and maybe just explain from your perspective, what is the Trump peace plan?
Okay, so let me answer your second question first, and then I'll explain why I think it is a good idea for Israel. The Trump peace plan is a plan developed by the Trump administration over the last 3 years, after listening to Palestinians and Israelis discuss what they would want and to end the conflict, and they came up with their best case type of plan. It's way different than any plan that came before it. It is still based on a two-state solution, so that was somewhat disappointing to a lot of us who were hoping not to see that. But it's based on a two-state solution, and the idea is that it's based on honesty. It's bringing honesty to the conflict and saying, okay, look, we have an area, what we call Judea and Samaria, what the rest of the world likes to call the West Bank, where I'm standing right now, and there's about 30% of it is settled, or the area of where Jews live, and about 70% of it is where Palestinian Arabs live, and therefore that's probably what it's going to look like at the end of any conflict. So let's just say that's where it should stand. In the creation of any Palestinian state, it can't be a violent terrorist entity. It has to be a peaceful state. So therefore the plans... I'm sorry?
I'm laughing because it's hard for me to believe that even though this is a quote unquote two-state solution, it's hard for me to believe that the Palestinians will have a state because they seem incapable of moving away from violence and Islamic terrorism. I'm sorry for interrupting you, sir. Forgive me. Go ahead.
No problem. No problem. So your laughter has place, and it's not out of place because the Palestinians rejected the plan even before it came out, which is really incredible to do. Not even to listen to the plan, and then when the plan did come out, they obviously rejected it again, but then didn't even offer a counter plan. And this is one of the biggest criticisms that we've had with the Palestinians over the last 30 years, is that from the start of negotiations, it's always been either the Quartet or the United States or the other Arab countries or Israel coming out with a plan and saying, okay, here's what we have to offer, and the Palestinians just simply rejecting it without counter-offering. They've never once counter-offered. It's an incredible way of negotiating, and that's why we're stuck where we are.
Well, the Obama well, let me just hold your thought. But it worked for them. Remember? I mean, this worked for them. They didn't have to negotiate with Israel because Obama was bringing down the hammer on the state of Israel and was prepared to give them, the Muslims, whatever they wanted. And so really, they got used to this after 8 years of the Obama administration. So, why should they feel like they have to negotiate? I think they're thinking that there's a possibility that Joe Biden will win the election. And once again, be back to the Obama days, and they don't have to negotiate at all because Biden will bring the hammer down on Israel. Don't mean to interrupt you, Rabbi, but I just wanted to make that point.
It's fine. Sure. And again, once again, you're right. But the Obama administration definitely did use that playbook, as did the Bush administration before them, and the Clinton administration before them, and the Bush administration before them, and onwards and onwards.
Yes.
The world seems to cater to the Palestinians. Obviously, they have a different look at it, but that seems to be the definite modus operandi of the world in the relationship with the Palestinians. But I would disagree with you on one thing. You say it seems to work for them. While it definitely works for them in terms of people coming back to them and catering to their needs, it's worked for their people. It's been horrible for them because their people have not been able to advance because their leaders keep playing these games. Right. So real leadership requires sacrifice, requires compromise, which the Israeli people have been willing to do. But the Palestinian leadership has refused to do so, and it's only been to their detriment. And with the Trump plan, this is my final sentence, the Trump plan takes away 30% of the land that they've been negotiating for. So if Israel goes ahead, and I hope they do, with this coming extending of sovereignty onto Judea and Samaria, it will hurt them greatly.
But the sad part about it is the Trump peace plan only allows for Israel applying sovereignty only over 13% of Judea, Samaria, and only 17% of the Jordan Valley. That's got to hurt.
Well, yes, it does, and there are plenty of people in our communities who want to reject the plan and say it's better not to take even a little bit if it's not everything. I'm more pragmatic than ideological, and I think that it makes more sense for us to take what we can get. The phrase being thrown around here is "a bird in the hand is better than two in the tree."
Sure.
So take what we can get now, and we'll worry about the rest of the 70% later. Again, the 70%, and I'm sure this is going to be something that you're going to ask, so I don't want to preempt it too much. But the 70% that goes to the Palestinians only goes to them if they agree to the conditions of the plan. It's not that as soon as we extend our sovereignty to this land, that this other 70% becomes a Palestinian state. The Palestinians have 4 years to take advantage of the plan, and if they don't, then everything starts again for the Palestinians, and they don't have a state guaranteed at all.
Right, and that's the positive side of this. Let's talk about something you said just a few minutes ago. You talked about the sacrifice, the leadership of the Palestinians, the PLO, or the Palestinian Authority. They don't need to really make sacrifices because from what I understand based on my research and talking to people in the region, there's a lot of Palestinians that prefer the fact that there's peace inside Israel and there's job opportunities. So, I mean, when you think about sacrifice, the Palestinian Authority gets so much foreign aid from Israel and from other countries. I mean, they've really done nothing to earn statehood. Indeed, Jordan is already a majority Palestinian state. Many people would argue the Palestinians already have a state because the British gave them one back in the 1920s. But let's move on. The Trump peace plan. From the perspective of the Israeli people overall, in general terms, does the peace plan represent a benefit to the state of Israel overall?
So overall, polls have shown, the latest poll came out and said that 67% of Israelis are in favor of moving ahead with the plan. Just to give you an idea, 67% is equivalent to unanimous anywhere else. The Israeli people are not known for getting on the same page. Keep in mind, Prime Minister Netanyahu, who's been elected for 10 straight years, only gets 25% of the vote. So if you think about what that means in regards to 67%, it's a monstrous number, yes. Which again would be the equivalent of 95% of America getting behind some sort of policy.
Excellent. And I'm also thinking about the Bible. I think about the Torah. Ladies and gentlemen, Torah meaning that this is the Israeli Bible. It's what Christians call the Old Testament. The Torah, strictly speaking, is the first 5 books: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. Is that correct, Rabbi?
Yeah, I would say it also extends to the first 24 books.
Okay,
all the way, yeah.
Excellent.
So the Torah does usually refer to the first 5 books, but what you like to call the Old Testament is what we call our Tanakh. The acronym.
Yes. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm thinking about the fact that Rabbi Yuri Pilichowski just indicated that 67% of the Israeli people overall embrace the Trump peace plan. I'm thinking of it from a biblical standpoint as well, Rabbi, that in the Torah in Genesis chapter 12, verse 3, it says that that I will bless. God saying, I'm going to bless people that bless the Jewish people. I'm going to curse people that curse the Jewish people, and that all families of the earth are going to be blessed through the Jewish people. And I think about the tremendous inventions, medical breakthroughs, engineering breakthroughs, military cutting edge equipment. I'm thinking about all the things that Israeli people or Jewish people have brought to civilization over the years, and they've certainly been a blessing to all the families of the earth. You can really see that teaching. Another definition for the Torah, the teaching. You can really see that has happened throughout humankind as a result of the benefit that the Jewish people bring to mankind. And I'm thinking, through this peace plan, will it not strengthen the national security interests of Israel, and thereby also be a blessing to us as well, because our enemies in most every case are the same, and we're standing together in the war against Islamic terrorists. Your thoughts, Rabbi?
Yes, 100%. I think that one of the key things that I'm an American citizen, so when I lobby representatives in America, I tell them that I'm representing, my opinion is not the opinion of an Israeli coming to you trying to explain to you what's best for Israel, but rather coming to tell you that what's best for Israel's national security strengthens America's national security. We share values. We're a light on a shining hill in a very, very dark neighborhood that really hates America. So when you talk about an entire region that would be darkened by hatred of freedom and the shared values that we have, and there's one beacon of light in that neighborhood, America needs to strengthen that beacon of light for its own interests, to make sure that it doesn't have a whole entire neighborhood that it can't enter. And so the state of Israel plays that role and strengthens America's national security. And that's why it's so important that America strengthens its relationship with Israel.
You mentioned in an earlier statement, I want to go back for just a moment, that the Trump plan gives the Muslim Arabs or Palestinians 4 years to pull it together, basically, and negotiate with Israel. One of the things that the Palestinian Authority, or the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization, has said is they're not going to work within the Trump parameters. What are the Trump parameters? Aren't the Trump parameters simply speaking, the Muslims, the Arabs, the Palestinians, they're not supposed to commit acts of terror? Is there more to those Trump parameters than I'm aware of, sir?
Yes, let me help you.
Thank you.
1 second, and I want to quote from a place of knowledge and not just a place of memory. So I wrote it down for us. Here it is. Okay, the first thing they have to do is demilitarize Gaza. That means that Hamas has to be disarmed. That would require nothing less of a civil war. That's the first thing. But it would make no sense to have a Palestinian state and claim that we've created peace if you have a militarized Gaza.
That's right.
That doesn't make any sense.
Right. Okay.
The Palestinians have to relinquish a right of return. The Palestinians have this notion that they have 8 million refugees out there, which are children and great-grandchildren of you have members of Congress, Rashida Tlaib of Michigan, who considers herself a Palestinian, even though she's never lived here. And they want to return to main Israel, not to Judea and Samaria, not to a Palestinian state, which would flood 8 million people here, and as a democratic state, that would obviously make Israel annihilated in a
Muslim state, a Muslim Arab state. Right.
Yeah. The next thing is recognize Israel as a Jewish state. Palestinians like to say that in the Oslo Accords they recognize Israel, but recognizing Israel doesn't really mean anything if you don't recognize Israel for what it is, which is a Jewish state. They have yet to do that. Recognize Israel's new borders, meaning this next move of extending sovereignty. Recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital, something they have refused to do. Stop incitement in its education system, which is probably the most key element into what creates the culture of violence in the Palestinian system today. Stop paying salaries to terrorists, what we like to refer to as pay to slay. which is an unbelievable, that the world allows Palestinians to get this and funds it by giving them foreign aid. They actually pay terrorists monthly salaries on a sliding scale based on the length of their jail sentence, and their jail sentence is based on how many Jews they've killed. So they're actually paying them more based on how many Jews they've killed and the heinousness of their attack, which is unbelievable. And the last thing is agree to Israeli military control west of the Jordan, meaning that they can't say that the Israeli army cannot protect its own borders.
So that last point 8, was military control over, say it again?
West of the Jordan River.
West of the Jordan River. Okay.
Right. Not in Jordan, but right. In Israel.
Right, in Israel. So I wanted to ask you about something that you just mentioned, the pay to slay issue. So I know President Trump has come down pretty strongly on this issue. In fact, that's why there was that time that President Trump cut foreign aid to the Muslim Arabs, the Palestinians, because they were using money to pay terrorists. And as you said, the more Jewish people they kill, the more money they make. And this is a crime. It's a crime for the banks to be in the middle of it. So banking institutions that are involved in that have committed a crime. And I'm thinking, apart from the Trump peace plan, what is the Netanyahu-Gantz coalition government going to do about the fact that these banks are committing crimes by facilitating the payment to terrorists that are sitting in Israeli prisons? I mean, what is the Netanyahu government going to do about that?
That you'd have to ask the Netanyahu government.
Okay.
I can only be just as frustrated as you are about it. It is an incredibly frustrating thing, but that's a point of frustration. So I'm sorry I don't have a good answer for you, but I don't have a good answer, and I wish I did, because a good answer would probably negate the question in the first place.
Thank you. Okay. I want to ask you another question. When, again, you open up the Torah, the teaching, the Bible, it talks about in chapter 15, I believe it's verse 16, it talks about the everlasting covenant that, the great I Am made with Abraham concerning the land, the boundaries. And it says here that the Lord said unto Abraham, I've given you this land from the river of Egypt unto the great river, the river Euphrates. Now that's a lot of land. That's land that covers what's in Egypt. Well, land that covers what's in Egypt, some land in Lebanon, some land in Syria, Jordan. I mean, from the Euphrates, right, all the way to the river in Egypt, the Nile River. In the 1967 war, Israel could have successfully been able to, I think, apply sovereignty to a lot of the quote unquote, I don't want to say quote unquote, the biblical parameters or borders.
Right.
And really,
we like to call it Greater Israel.
Greater Israel, right. Greater Israel, but historic Israel. The covenant Israel, everlasting Israel is my point. And it always has disturbed me that the Israeli government and the military walked away from that and literally handed Jerusalem back to King Hussein of Jordan, now the current king.
Not Jerusalem, just the Temple
the Temple Mount, which has been a problem ever since. So, I guess my question is, I don't understand why the liberal part of the Israeli population, why Benny Gantz, only wants to apply sovereignty in a very minimalist or minimum way, whereas Netanyahu and the Likud party want to really apply sovereignty over, a greater portion of what historically has belonged to Israel. And if you believe at all in the scriptures, I mean, it's part of an everlasting, forever covenant. Your thoughts on that, sir?
Yeah, so first I would say that no one really knows Benny Gantz's position. It's all media speculation. He hasn't said anything out loud, and he hasn't said anything publicly, so nobody really knows his position. So I wouldn't play this as a Netanyahu versus Gantz position. I would play it more of there are Israelis who are very concerned strategically what happens if we start applying sovereignty or extending sovereignty to areas where the world doesn't agree. And that's really where the fear comes in. Will there be sanctions? Will there be boycotts? Will we face another intifada? So it's a fear position. It's a position of we're scared of what might happen. Others are more ambitious, and I think that's more true to the Zionist spirit of, this is our land. So why shouldn't we govern it? Why shouldn't we control it? And it should be a lot more than just 30%. But we deal with the realities that are around us. The state of Israel has been born out of compromise. By 1948 was a compromise.
Right.
So that's always been the balance that we've tried to strike is how far can we grow without getting ourselves into trouble, and that's the fear because it's an unknown. We don't know what will happen if we take this next step.
Yes, but you can't be afraid. Remember the story about the giants in the land and how the spies were sent out, and those that gave a bad report, were not blessed.
We just read here in Israel. We just read that portion this past Shabbat, this past Saturday. We read that portion in our synagogues. So it's apropos timing. But
isn't that something that I thought of that?
Yes, yeah. So, but it's again also it's important to keep in mind that our country is not a theocracy. It's not run by religion, as much as religion plays a huge part in Israel.
But that's a principle. But that's a principle, Rabbi.
Right.
The principle is not to make decisions out of it.
You're not going to find me You're not going to find me disagreeing with you. I'm just explaining why Israeli policy is as it is. But I'm on your side on this one.
Well, I just think it ought to inform the Israeli leadership because those are principles that are important, I think, in determining foreign policy. I mean, to me, from my perspective, it has nothing to do with a theocracy. It's a principle to embrace in following through on policy. You have to move forward in strength and not by what if scenarios. What if this, what if that? Everybody thought when the capital was going to be moved from the Israeli capital was going to be moved from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem that the whole world was going to come undone. Everybody thought that
the embassy being moved.
The embassy
the
being.
capital was always Jerusalem.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm
100%.
sorry.
But look, right. I would also have for my American friends, I would also have a word of caution, which is if you're not here, I wouldn't advocate so much what should happen here. I think it's for the people that are here to determine, and I think that's an important statement that I like to emphasize to the people that. We're here. Let us make our decisions, and if it's mistakes, let us make our own mistakes. Very true.
Very true, sir. Very true. I want to thank you so much for coming on the program today. I really appreciate it, and it's wonderful getting a perspective from you there in the state of Israel. Really appreciate it. I'll give you the final word, sir.
Oh, no, my final word is always thank you. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure being on your show, and I really appreciate the friendship that you and your listeners have towards us in our state. And as soon as the airport's open, we hope that you'll all come back and visit very soon.
I would love to come back and visit again. Thank you very much. And this time when I go, I'm going to want to meet you and your family. Okay.
No problem. We can do a show from my house.
Very good. That sounds perfect. Okay, thank you.
Okay,
and have a blessed
all the best.
Blessed evening. Thank you. Okay, bye-bye.
You too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, so I want to thank my sponsors for supporting the Denice Gary Show. I want to thank Frugati's Restaurant, owned and operated by Ralph Frugaletti. The restaurant is here in the city of Bakersfield in the county of Kern. They have absolutely wonderful Italian food. You can give them a call at 661 830 2000 836 2000. I think I need new glasses. So 661-836-2000. Give them a call. They're voted year after year as the best Italian restaurant in all of Kern County. Fresh ingredients, much of it locally grown right here in our area. This is the breadbasket of America. We're certainly an agricultural county. Oil and ag is what makes us famous worldwide. Come to Frugati's restaurant right there on Coffee Road between Stockdale Highway and Truxton. Also, the hub of the aerospace industry here in California is right here in East Kern County. Scott Baker is as a former Marine Corps officer, is the owner of Anita's Products, a forward-leaning manufacturer that builds and distributes around the country to major defense and aerospace companies the kinds of hardware that they need. Give Scott Baker a call, 661-822-6873, 661-822-6873. Tell Scott, I want to give you our business. And please know that he works for the best. He works for Boeing, Lockheed Martin, United Technologies, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon General Electric, as well as every United States ally, including Israel. That's right, Anita's Products even does work for the state of Israel. And we just so appreciate Scott Baker, former Marine Corps officer. Maybe I heard a Marine say to me once, "You're never a former Marine." So maybe I shouldn't say that. But at any rate, give Scott a call. Again, it's 661-822-6873. Thank you so much for listening to the Denice Gary Show. This is Denice signing off.